What's up, queens? Welcome back to the Female Dating Strategy Podcast, the meanest female-only podcast on the internet. I'm actually really proud of that moniker, actually. It was started, I think, as sort of like a slur from, I don't know, it was either Vice or the Daily Mail or like one of those two. But I've actually come to be really proud of it because there are many, many female-only podcasts on the internet. And to have the accolade of being the meanest, I'll take that. I am your host, Savannah, unfortunately without Ro today, which I will touch on what's happening with us and that in a second. But today is a very, 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 very big day in FDS podcast history. So as you all know, almost a year ago now, wow, time really flies. Ro and I said that we were stepping down from the podcast due to things like feeling that we had sort of become a bit of a broken record of some sorts. And also we wanted to bring a new perspective to the pods by inviting different women with different experiences and background to come and be permanent hosts. So we had a really, really strong round of applications. We released some of the audition episodes, which you heard earlier on in the year. And I am extremely pleased to announce that we have our three new musketeers in place. These are women who they blew us away in their application and also in their audition, but also they offered something that I feel would be a good addition to the standing podcast episodes as well. So I'm really, really excited to semi-pass the torch on to these new hosts, and I'll come on to that in a little bit. So if we start with our first new host, we have Patricia. Patricia, welcome to the Female Dating Strategy Podcast as a host.
Hi, thank you so much. I remember the day that I was listening to you and Rose saying that you're looking for a new host. I was cycling down the street with my headphones in my ears. And I was like, I almost jumped off of my bike because I was so excited.
And you were insane enough to apply.
Yes, I was encouraged by my best friend. And now I'm here at my house with my computer recording with you. That's amazing. Super excited.
I was really, really encouraged by the episode that you did, and especially the follow-up story as well, which we'll get to in future episodes, hopefully. But I was really, really excited to have you on, I guess. So in terms of, I guess, we touched on the reasons as to why you applied in your first episode, which I will link to in the show notes below. But in terms of the sorts of things and different perspectives you would like to see on the pod, what could you give our listeners, I guess, a taste or a flavour of the new perspectives that will be brought to this pod now that you're here?
I think it's like a full circle, because what drew me so much to FDS were the same kind of wisdoms that I had in myself, but I needed to hear to be reflected. Like, I'm strong, I need to focus on myself. When I'll be in my best position, I will be able to do beneficial things in my life, like have a beneficial relationship, focus on how things feel for me. And now that I feel fully initiated in FDS, I feel also that the things that I say to my friends, to my girlfriends, have like a very sound base, because I know that everything I'm saying is FDS approved. So it's just reflecting the same truths on, I think.
And I think that's really important as well. I think deep down, I think a lot of women, they would resonate with a lot of what FDS says, but it sort of takes somebody else to put it into words or to bring it to life or just to say it out loud before you're thinking, actually, this is real and this is, this makes sense to me as well. So I completely resonate with that too.
Yes, to have that empowerment validated in the highest sense. Like I say to my friends when they ask me about like relationship advice, I'm like, listen, you are a queen. You are a queen on your pedestal. You're waiting for people to come and suit your needs. That's all there is. Really, it's nothing below that. And it's fulfilling for me to be able to say that because I'm confident in saying that. And I think it's amazing to resonate that onwards, to have more women as a focal point, to be able to say that with strength and proliferate that knowledge on and on.
Agreed. And I really, really love how you put that as well. We didn't actually script this episode before we started, by the way. So I guess to stir the pot a bit, I'm going to ask each of the new hosts a question. Given the state of dating, what would you say is the number one issue that you see? I know we could probably do a 10-episode series on all the issues in dating. But if you had to pick your number one, what would be the top issue for you? And how do you see FDS playing a role, I guess, in addressing that?
I'll let my beautiful co-hosts answer first.
Okay, I'll go first. That's a bit unfair. I'll go first to give you some time to think. So if I had to pick out one big issue, and I think that Ro touched on this when we started the podcast years ago now, because it was literally years ago, 21, my God, was that I don't think men and women are speaking the same language. It's like women are speaking Swahili and men are speaking Spanish and trying to understand each other in terms of dating. There's just been a complete breakdown and disconnect in terms of, what a relationship should be. And it almost feels like, because of the way relationship dynamics have changed over time, and I think it's a lot to do with the fact that women are more emancipated in some parts of the world. Let's not take it for granted that unfortunately in other parts of the world, our sisters are still very, very much oppressed and they don't have the same freedoms that we enjoy in the Western world. But I think that because I guess relationships and marriages and interactions like with men have relied on women being so dependent on men for so long, and that is now shifting. It's almost like men don't know or understand, how to relate to women and what we actually want. So you get things like the red pill that will say things like, oh yeah, women love it when you're an arsehole. Women love it when you're playing dread game. You need to be masculine and you need to lay down the law so that she just follows it. When actually, times are changing. We're now moving into a time where, again, in parts of the world, not everywhere, unfortunately, and I hope every woman around the world gets to experience this state, but we're now moving to a place where women are finding heterosexual relationships optional. It's not something that we need. We don't need a man to pay our bills or to give us housing or to give us job opportunities in certain parts of the world now. And as a result, I think, again, like men they're basically freaking the fuck out, right? And they just don't know how to speak our language on any front. And I think that one of the things that the subreddit actually did was it almost gave, men a blueprint as to what a high value woman, so to speak, would actually want from a relationship. And we used to get DMs in the inbox from men saying things like, I actually follow the subreddit because it teaches me how to be a better partner or how to attract women. Because ultimately, I feel like if you're a decent, man who wants a relationship with a woman with honest intentions, then FDS is not going to be a threat to you. Because, when we say a low value man, if you're a high value man, you'll know that we're not talking about you. So it's, in a way, it's quite telling when a man gets offended by the term low value male, because it's like, if you didn't feel it applied to you, then you wouldn't be offended by it. So that's what I would say is the biggest challenge. How can FDS resolve that? I think we just need to just keep banging the drum until, I want to say FDS values, but I think a lot of these ideas, they preceded FDS. They came from things like radical feminism. They came from things like different cultures around the world where we just put our foot down. And I think we just need to just keep banging the drum, because I'm already seeing a massive shift in the dating advice and the things that are normalized, even more so than 3 years ago, where if we look at Reddit, for example, Reddit isn't reflective of real life, I think, maybe, but it gives you an insight into how a lot of people think. And if you see the dating advice on there, now versus 3 years ago, you see a lot more women on that site being, less willing to just communicate, or, less, willing to give men the benefit of the doubt. All these things that FDS was sort of reviled and, basically chastised, for saying that women should have standards, that women should lead with the first red flag, that men know if they want to marry you. So if he's, keeping you on the hook for years, he's not serious. All of these things now are becoming more normalized in dating advice for women. And I think FDS has been a big part of that revolution. And I think we will continue to play a big part in that revolution as well. And here endeth the lesson.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Hear, fucking hear.
Yes.
Savannah, that was such a wonderful encapsulation of, I think, what FDS has meant dare I say for all of us, Diana, Patricia, I think it's about valuing oneself, which if you're a woman, you have probably been inculcated, you've been programmed to devalue any of the parts that make you a woman. And if we start to think about this from an interior perspective versus an exterior, I mean, I think your question is so valid. But I think oftentimes, and mostly to our detriment, we're saying, why don't men understand? Why can't they listen to what we're saying? You know, like believe women. Could you just believe what we're telling you? It's not like we're not using our words to communicate. So I think in that sort of scenario, what we have to look at is what are we doing ourselves? And not from a victim blaming standpoint, but like from I'm a person with conscious will, with voluntary choices. Like you say, we no longer have to be in a vassalage system. We're no longer legally property of men, of our fathers, of our brothers, of our husbands. We belong to ourselves now, more or less. And that, of course, has varying degrees across the globe. But I think the best thing we can do, and maybe this is coming from like the Buddhist studies that I've read, is, this saying where the Buddhists say, your influence in this world stops where your fingertips end. What does that mean? It means the world that is yourself, you yourself are an entire world. Whatever you do to change yourself, to alter your own perceptions, to move the needle on the ideologies that you believe in, that is ultimately what creates the change that we're hoping to see in the world, right? Certainly, these FDS values, as you say, these is just the latest iteration of feminist liberation, of women's liberation. We're at the point now where we actually can take the time, have the space, listen to our sisters. I mean, just being able to like listen to TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube. We've never had such a critical mass point of communication amongst ourselves, right? I mean, we've been divided and kept from one another, siloed more or less in like these domestic prisons, right? And so I think the fact that now we can listen to one another as opposed to listening to men, because we know men with honest intentions will come correct. Those who don't, that's part of our, discerning process. It's learning those who don't have honest intentions. But honestly, what are our own intentions in the world? How do we want to see our lives proceed? Who are the people that we're allowing into our lives? And that includes friends and family, as well as the men that we hope to ally with. So I think ultimately, what are we, or what am I as an individual doing to challenge my own beliefs, to name things that before now I haven't been able to put a name to, and to really shift my own understanding of the role I want to play in this world and in my own life.
That's beautiful.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I think another aspect of it is that what we're trying to do is really build something that's foundational. That's, at the root essence of what we do is to make common sense common again. Because common sense is surprisingly uncommon.
Yeah, my mum always...
Make common sense common again.
Can we get that on a t-shirt?
Yeah, my mum always said that growing up, and I didn't actually believe her until I became an adult. That's when it made sense to me.
The thing is, when you're a kid, you know that if you touch a hot pot, or you don't know, you touch a hot pot and you realize, oh, I'm going to burn my fingers, right? And you don't do it ever again. But we live in a society that tells you that if you burn your fingers, it's a sign of virtue. And a lot of women are in a position where they think that being self-sacrificial and just causing a great deal of self-harm is going to help them in the aid of love, even though common sense tells them that that's actually not a strategy that will work, or a winning strategy. They may get a man, but at what cost, right? You're not going to get a good man by compromising yourself that way. Men can be as stupid as they want in love, but women can't. We can't afford to be stupid. So really, when we're talking about common sense, we're talking about how society kind of slow boils us into accepting that there's really not much for our life, like not much we can ask for in our lives. And so we get used to this position of self-sacrificing because it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that's a slow erosion of your self-love, of your self-belief, your self-esteem, whatever you want to call it. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a lot of patriarchal conditioning that comes through the media, through education, sometimes from your own family, sometimes from friends. So it takes a lot to take that first step to be like, I am going to assert myself and ask for what I want. And I think that that's what makes FDS really radical, is that they say that it's okay to put yourself first, radical even, to put yourself first, and probably necessary if you want to find a good partner. And I think that that's a strategy that really appealed to me when I first heard about FDS, because, I grew up with a very strong relationship with my father, and he told me a lot of stuff that made a lot of common sense back in the day, and I understood it. But at the same time, you get so conditioned by society to accept scraps that after a point, the common sense is rationalized away by something stupid. And you hear everyone parroting the exact same belief. So it becomes really hard for you to find the outliers or models because you're so used to having the parroted Cosmo 10 ways to please your man kind of rhetoric, which was until even 10 years ago, super common. I think that was the only kind of advice women got in dating was, just compromise yourself, be more feminine, be more submissive, be more this and be less that. And it never actually stopped to consider what exactly is in a woman's best interest, because 99% of the time, it is not a man.
Preach. Yes. Oh my goodness. That just felt so good to hear. Thank you.
And again, I think that is, that's really, really where FDS, I think, has become really accessible, because especially to younger people as well. I feel really sorry for people my age. I don't really know, am I Gen Z or millennial? I was born in the 90s, so maybe I'm millennial.
It depends whether you're late. If you're late 90s, you're Gen Z. If you're early 90s, you're millennial. If you're middle, you're like a zillennial.
Oh, okay. I'm Gen Z then. But yeah, and I feel really bad for my generation and the people after me in terms of, I guess, the stock of men that is out there. But at the same time, I'm also hopeful that the standards can and will raise by, again, making the things that Diana and Patricia said just more normalized in dating discourse, that it's okay for women to put ourselves first. And you know what? It makes men so mad. Well, at least men who are chronically online, it makes them so, so angry when they see a woman who is child-free or who is saying that I'm going to focus on myself. And if I find a good partner, great. If I don't, I'll still just focus on myself. It makes them really, really mad. Once you get past the cackling at just how stupid they are, it does make you wonder, is the whole premise of heterosexual relationship, does it rely on women having low self-esteem, on women not loving themselves enough, on women not knowing their worth? Is that the scam?
It's totally predicated on that. But on the other hand, the greatest way to know, a good barometer to know whether you're on the right track or the wrong track, let's say the wrong track first, is if you have a bunch of men happy and agreeing with you. That's when you know you have compromised yourself a little too much. If a bunch of men are happy with you, that's when you know that you have done something very, very wrong. If men are upset with you, that's just nature acting its course. They're supposed to be upset. We have these standards for the survival of this species. The same way that they say that we should be procreating with everything that moves. We're like, no, we actually care about the kinds of human beings that are going to come, a few decades from now, because we don't want idiots ruling our planet,
Well, and certainly, right, this is something that FDS actually had posted several years ago, The Tragedy of Heterosexuality by Jane Ward. And it is about this hierarchical structure upon which patriarchy is predicated. And what I find really amusing is every time I'm listening to these alpha bros, the tater tots, etc., the red pillars, what they're describing is how they want to live, typically. If they were saying the same thing about themselves, they'd be so proud of themselves for living such, empowered, independent lives. But as soon as it switches genders, all of a sudden, it's the sky is falling. And so I just find this hypocrisy so telling that oftentimes when they are, maligning and decrying women's behavior, we're simply acting now as men have been allowed to for millennia. And only now is it a problem. So that's what I find most curious, because it's are you listening to yourselves? Do you not see this double standard? And of course, this is part of the cult and the conditioning that's been given to all of us.
100%. And I think a thing that FDS also, I think, is good at nailing home is that this whole idea of, looking for equality in dating is just a fool's errand. You'll never find it because, men and women are fundamentally different. They fundamentally bring different things to the relationship. Women are generally more at risk in heterosexual relationships from coming to harm, from victims of domestic violence, from being raped, from being left impoverished after divorce as much as the internet bros will tell you otherwise. It's actually women who are more at risk of being in poverty after divorce, not men. And with all that in mind, you need to go into it with an equitable mindset. So this hunt for equality, ultimately, in any scenario where there is an advantage or a disadvantaged group, equality only benefits the advantaged group because it allows them to maintain that status of advantage. But we sort of like rattled on, actually. So, Patricia, you were off the hook with that question, to be fair. That was a bit of an unfair one.
No worries. Just my intuition said as soon as you asked the question was low effort. And that's pretty much what all of my beautiful co-hosts, Rose and Diana, also what you were presenting, Savannah. I think that's the major obstacle in women dating is just low effort, but also it resonates with everything that you guys said, because if we're not surrounded by other women and men who resonate high standards, then we think that the low effort that we're getting, that's just reality, but it's not. And it's also pertains to like our spiritual beliefs. Like you said, the Buddhist way, Rose, you were touching on that, like believing, knowing in your heart that there is a better way. It's like going for a job interview while already feeling like you have the job, like you need to be dating as if you already have the most amazing partner who treats you perfectly, who validates all of your needs, because that partner is you. It's about having a good relationship with yourself. And that's why I love that the first pillar of FDS is leveling up. Because if you're good on your own, then you're not afraid of letting go of a bad date. You're not afraid of letting go of a short relationship because you're not desperate to be with somebody, because you know that your baseline is good. And then you can measure, does this person add value to my life? Because to begin with, your life is amazing.
Yes. And it shifts the dynamic of dating. So as opposed to men competing against each other for a woman, which is what they're hoping for because they know the bar for men is also fucking low. Like before, a man just had to basically be alive and he'd be guaranteed a wife and multiple kids. Basically, because I always say that marriage was affirmative action for undesirable men. And I've been proven right by the fact that the marital rate, as women are becoming more emancipated again in parts of the world, hopefully again my sisters around the world will also get to a state where they don't need marriage to survive. The marriage rate is dropping. The rate of long-term relationships is dropping between heterosexual people because it isn't that they now have to compete against other men. They have to compete against a woman's life. They have to compete against her sense of solitude, her self-esteem, her self-love. And a lot of them are just not competition for that. Because I found as I got more established, like in my career, in myself, 99% of men are just not impressive in any way, shape or form. You know, you can just like look straight past them. At least in my experience anyway.
You're not wrong.
Also, I think it would help for our listeners to hear that actually the reaction that men are having right now is completely born out of fear. Almost everything they're doing right now is major, massive projection. Because even if you look at the history of like romance, like when it originated in France or whatever, they made romance up as a way to give themselves a way to level the playing fields because they couldn't compete with aristocratic men because aristocratic men had money. They had resources.
Ooh.
And women were obviously in a society where women had no way to make money and had no education. They had to rely on men for resources. So these poor men unionized and they were like, well, he may have money, but he won't love you like I do. And we all know that that's the most useless proposition. If love could pay the bills, then I would love them right now. But seeing as your, smegma-infused dick is not exactly paying my bills right now, I'm not interested.
Oh my God, Diana. Oh my God.
I'm not interested.
Oh my God. Oh.
I'm just saying, I might be a lot more ruthless than you guys, expected, but I'm just letting you know, like, I don't suffer fools at all. So whenever they pull up this shit of like, oh, but my love, I'm like, your love doesn't do shit for me. When it starts paying my bills, I'll start thinking about it. It's common sense, but to them, common sense is ruthless, because it excludes them. That's why. Men are trying to make it a free-for-all buffet where it's inclusive. And you know how they always like decry all of this like woke stuff? Like, oh, why should we be inclusive? Why should we let women do X, Y, and Z? Why should a woman be president? Blah, blah. But the truth is that they benefit from inclusivity more than we do. If women actually maintained a ruthless exclusive standard where they have a baseline of like, these are the things I need for me to even consider partnering with a man, a good chunk of the men in their own country would be ineligible by default. And they know that. So a lot of how they're reacting right now is just projection and fear. The people who are actually afraid are men.
100%.
And governments are terrified because they see the balance shifting, they see power slipping. And I think this is really interesting, especially I'm here in the United States, and I've been also seeing online there's a lot of discourse around falling birth rates. Have any of you all been having that pop up in your feeds?
Not about the US, but I heard that about different countries.
I've heard that about Korea and Japan and all these, and China and all these countries. Like, and their proposals for fixing it are so stupid as well. It's like China's like, oh, well, maybe men can take 2 wives. Like, you can't even pay for one. What are you talking about, two?
What?
Also, because of the femicide of so many of their girl babies, where are you going to find these 2 women to 1 man?
Yeah, they went from a 1-child policy to like a 2-wife policy overnight. They're like,
oh my God.
But again, I think this speaks to the desperation and the other delusion of men in power, governments. They see in the next 10, 15, 20 years, when you don't have workers, what's going to happen to economies, what's going to happen on the front of war. Because we all know that when there are young men who are underemployed, who don't have women and families, violence rises. And so this is also another one of their concerns, right? It's like, how do you maintain a stable civilization or a stable society without sacrificing women?
It's so weird. Like there's a battle going on in women's uterus. Like I'm originally from Israel, and one of the reasons that I sadly had to leave because all of the immoral war happening, and so many people are for that war, and it's exactly these people who are stupid, they don't have any love in their heart. They're racist, but they're the ones that are making babies. And the ones that see reality clearly, they're not making any babies, or they're making them a lot later, or they're making less. And it's so weird.
It's the same in the UK. The birth rate is declining massively in the UK because it's just so fucking expensive to have a kid, and the government have legislated to make it harder for people to have children. People are having kids later, they're buying houses later, that's delaying the number of children that they're having. And yeah, again, they're just not really adopting. And when people say family-friendly policies, what they really mean is essentially policies that benefit the mother, because whenever there is a new family created, it's normally the mother that is most impacted and vulnerable, more so than the father. So when we talk about family-friendly policies, what we should be really saying is maternity-friendly policies or maternal-friendly policies, because it hits them the hardest. But I recognise we've massively drifted off, so I can give you a taste of our episodes to come.
Well, yes, and I was just going to say, if I may just say one thing too, doesn't it give anybody whiplash how quickly we shifted from overpopulation is going to end this world's resources to we don't have enough babies being born?
my theory is that it's actually been quite disconcerting for a lot of political leaders to understand just how powerful women have become in their own countries. Because we've gone from a place where men were like the primary earners and primary purchasers to women being primary earners and primary purchasers in a lot of developed nations. And the most valuable worker in capitalism will always be a mother, because a mother is the only person who can actually birth more workers. So they're always going to try to find ways to regulate what a woman does and what mothers and, people with uteruses specifically, like, women specifically could do, because we are the most valuable resource. But the weird thing is, if you look at the way that they create policies, it's never keeping the most valuable worker in mind. They incentivize you like with like a financial incentive that's very, very meager. Like it's like, oh, for every second baby you give birth to, we'll give you like $50,000. And it's like, well, that's really not an investment in the child's name, because a child is more expensive than that amount now. And with rising costs and inflation, all that stuff, like if that woman is the default parent, really in the old days with factories and stuff, like they had to keep children alive long enough for them to work in factories. Now we're in a position where we're actually talking about quality of life. And a lot of women have realized that their quality of life vastly improves when they don't have a man attached. And that's risky for a government, because how do we incentivize women to give birth to children? And that's why so much of their policies is around like making it like just cheaper for like 5 seconds, as opposed to actually coming up with long-term strategies to encourage. Because I don't think the problem is that women don't want to start families. Let me just put that out there. It's just that the quality of men that we have to partner with to make these families is so bad. And these governments don't ever come up with a solution to do something about the guys. It's always like, oh, let's take away this woman's reproductive rights and let's make it harder for them to, get an abortion or get a divorce and trap them. And they're taking us back into the past instead of carving out a new way to the future. And that's because most of the leadership are men, and men are hardly ever visionaries.
Exactly. So first of all, I super agree with you. And I would just like to caveat or add something that this problem with people making less babies, creating less families, I think it has to do not only with the deal becoming worse for women, but also with the deal becoming worse for everybody. But pertaining to women, I think the problem with everything that you described and with the legislation being not in favor of women really is because the paradigm shift is not there yet, meaning women are not revered as fucking magical creatures for being able to create life, but as kind of like a resource. Like they are able to create human beings to take part in the working force, whatever, but the paradigm shift is still not there to respect women on this very deep level. And that is exactly like you said, I think, because most of the leadership is men. So they treat women as a resource manufacturing part of society.
Yeah. And it's funny how these societal things filter into your dating life. Cause I'm sure all of us have been on a date where a man has been like, well, you don't want to have children? Oh my God. But what about my legacy and the future of society and blah, blah, blah.
Well, that didn't happen to me personally, but I have a friend who's 38 and she said that she was on a date in in the last, I don't know, half a year. And somebody asked her, how old is she? And then the next question was, well, did you freeze eggs? Which is so...
Oh my
This is
god!
such a strange question to ask.
First date. First.
That's so weird. I mean, I've definitely gotten a lecture. I live in a very overpopulated country. So for anyone to be lecturing me about not fulfilling my maternal duty of bearing more sons or whatever the fuck is just hilarious, because you're not Genghis Khan, man. You're not a legacy maker. You're not a person I give a shit about procreating with in order to ensure your bloodline. It's just not Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? Some of these guys just have such an inflated sense of self-importance. You are not that important. I hate to say it to you, but your parents lied to you. You're not that important. In the grander scheme of things, the government would be quite happy if you just vanished.
Well, that's again part of the patriarchal, I don't want to say misogynistic, that's a deep word, but kind of a patriarchal, chauvinistic way of seeing women as you get a wife to continue your line, to have babies for you. No, and that comes back to us having a better deal. We want men who are eligible to be our partners, who will support us and make us happy, and then we'll be glad to have kids with them. But we're not going to do them as a service to them.
Yep. And the concern is never about the quality of life for the child either. It's always about what kind of family image can I portray to impress other men? Their entire association in society is so homoerotic. It's crazy. Straight men are not that straight.
Why do you think it's homoerotic? I'm curious. Can you explain?
Because it's all about being in competition with other men, who they seek validation and love and admiration and respect from. It's always other men.
Yeah, it tends to be other men. Yeah.
Well, if I may interject, this is the famous quote from Marilyn Frye about homosociality, which is to say, men are male loving. All of those individuals whom they love, revere, respect, will learn from, will deed their legacy to, is other men. And women are simply tools or resources used to peacock for other males.
Goddamn.
Right? And I love that quote from her. Speaking of ruthlessness, Diana, I come from an extremely patriarchal, misogynistic family lineage. Our father actually referred to himself as pater familias, which if you look that up in the Greek and in the Latin, it refers to a slave holder, because the head of the family owned all of those beneath him, right? Wife, children, they were all his property. So, right, and that is how he helped. He was a tyrannical dictator. And oh, you know what, Savannah, is this me just kind of going into a little bit of my background? Can this count for that?
Yes, actually, that will segue in nicely. So,
yes, excellent.
Sorry for the roundabout. I will introduce our next host, as you've been hearing her nattering away quite nicely in this episode. We have Rose. Rose is, again, she gave a phenomenal first episode, and she has a really unique perspective being, I don't know, is it, what's the name for people born in the 80s? Is it Gen X?
I was just laughing over you all talking about that because I've never been able to figure it out because they stop at like 1980 and I was actually born right there on the cusp between 80 and 81. I'm a little bit of two worlds, you might say. But I was born in the analog era. How about we leave it at that?
The pre-Apple Microsoft era. There
yes!
I believe they call you Xennials.
Yes, I have heard that. The Generation X and Millennials, so I'm a Zennial, technically speaking. Yes.
A Zennial. So we have a Zennial on the podcast for the first time. And yeah, so Rose, take us away with your background. And again, I know we've had this conversation already, but it'll be interesting to get your thoughts, especially as somebody who is older and wiser than the other hosts on this podcast.
I'm certainly older. I will accept that.
About the shift in dating from the time when I guess like you were younger to now.
Oh, Savannah, seriously. I mean, I am so inspired and encouraged. I'm so heartened by you younger sisters. And it is interesting to be sort of the older woman in this situation because, you know, I still always say that I'm a teen girl in my heart of hearts. I'm still like 13 in my heart of hearts. And I love that about myself because it means that I've maintained, you know, a sort of a lightness of spirit. I've maintained a buoyancy and a resiliency that unfortunately too many of my women sisters my age and older have had it beat out of them. And that's been a very sad journey to see as I've gotten older and older. I'll circle back to that. So as I was telling you all, I grew up in this extremely, you know, misogynistic, patriarchal, hyper Christian family out in the farmlands of the middle America. So our nearest neighbor was over a kilometer away and they were all farmers. And so I grew up working in the fields, picking rock, babysitting farmers' kids, detasseling corn. I started working when I was 8 years old because that's what you do in the farmlands. You work. And I was brought up and I was a very dutiful youngest daughter and I was always so eager to please and I was always very tender-hearted. I know one of our neighbors sort of derogatorily nicknamed me Precious, like, oh, isn't she so precious? And now I'm like, you know what?
Oh, cute nickname.
I fucking am precious. Hell yeah. So, but it was interesting because in that era, that was considered sort of a, oh, you know, isn't she precious? As my brothers would say, oh yeah, you're real special, Rose. You're real special. And if you were a girly girl and you dared to be one, I didn't even know that I was daring. That's just who I was. Oh my goodness, the vitriol and the disdain that you were met with, the contempt. And so I had this father who both loved and hated me. He loved that I was, dare I say, brilliant. I'm in the process of finishing up a PhD from a noted school here. Although I don't even actually care at this point because it's just such a circle jerk of men. And let's not get into that. But the point is, I had this father who loved my brilliance and also despised my brilliance because, as my therapist later told me, she said, you had the biggest dick in that family because I was the only one willing to challenge him, right? That's why I think I went into academia for a spell, was because it's like, I want to have all the fundamentals. I want to have all the references. I want to be able to argue and win every single argument with this man. He passed before that actually happened. But the point was, this was a real determinant in my upbringing because I thought, you know, I have to beat men at men's games because being a woman was to be lesser. That's how I was brought up. And so when you ask about how dating has been, you know, it's been a real clusterfuck for me because I've lived all over the world. I lived in South America for over 6 years. I did research there as well as just backpacking and being a hippie, essentially, or a tree hugger, as my father used to call me. Right, but he did not mean that nicely, but I accepted it as that. I was like, yes, I do love trees. That is correct. But so after all this time and seeing, you know, different men from different cultures and different dating, what I kept seeing was this common denominator of like sacrifice and martyrdom of all the women. Because the women that I met around the world are amazing. Like, oh my gosh, I just love travel so much because you really do meet the most phenomenal people and you realize like, we're all in this together. I hate these borders. I hate these nationalities. I hate passports. Why should I have to have a passport to traverse the land? Right? You don't own people and borders, but yet that's what we've been brought up to think is totally natural. Although it wasn't until, I believe it was post-World War II that passports were even enacted. So it hasn't even been a whole century that passports have even existed. And yet we take them as a de facto part of life now, right? So growing up in this family and having older brothers who, one older brother swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. The other basically fled the United States and has never moved back. He's the one I get along with best. And this is all to tie in with Diana's mention of being ruthless, because FDS actually helped get me to the point where I cut out the brother who is a misogynist. I mean, this is a man who, he's happy that I'm not having children because he thinks that I'm perverted and diseased because of my beliefs, right? Because I dare to believe that women are equal humans under God, I am a degenerate who should not reproduce. And this is an attitude that's surprisingly common. That's why it's another thing I mentioned about sort of having a whiplash, because some men are so mad we're not having kids, and then others are saying, well, good, I'm glad you're not. We don't want your kind reproducing. Although I am an auntie to many, many children, and I'm very active in all of my friends' lives who have children. And that is what I've seen growing up, is so many of my friends from high school, they marry their high school sweethearts. The husbands are alcoholics. They beat them. They cheat on them, right?
Shit.
Their children attempt suicide because they're so miserable living with this kind of father. And the women stay. And this has been, I think, the hardest pill for me to swallow as I've gotten only more and more radicalized, right? And these are women whom I love, and we go back 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. My childhood bestie. We go back to being 5 years old in kindergarten together. I'm now 43. And I can't give them up. I can't shut them out just because I disagree with their life choices. Because if anybody understands, it's I, who comes from that same background, who was brought up in this, miasma, in this swamp of just women hatred. I don't know if our younger sisters understand. There was a quote once, was Germaine Greer, and she said something like, if women understood how much men hate us, they would act very differently. But it's too painful to actually accept it. And so
I think that was Andrea Dworkin. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Was that Andrea Dworkin?
Yeah, it was Dworkin.
Okay. And who is one of my great grand liberators, as far as I would say Dworkin and bell hooks have been like equally important for me.
R.I.P. both queens, yeah.
Right. Amazing women. And I'm trying to work up the courage when it came that FDS was looking for new hosts. All my friends are so encouraging and they're so supportive of me. And some of them have managed to leave their men, and some of them are in the process of trying to separate and divorce because they're getting into their 30s and 40s now. And they're like, is this really my life? And I'm back here like, no, this doesn't need to be your life. Life can be so different. Life can be so wonderful. Like, I'll help you. I've got resources, because I always have a list of different resources for women trying to escape financial abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. Women need so much support to leave these situations, and they often don't have the faintest clue where to find it. So I've taken upon myself to always have sort of like a document that I've kept so I can point my sisters out to where they need to go for help. But when FDS announced that they were looking for new hosts, and I said to my friends, like, I'm kind of thinking about doing this. I mean, the response was overwhelming, that they were like, how dare you even hesitate? So my friends were all saying, you are made for this, Rose. This is a sign from the universe, because I always believe in the signs from the universe, right? Like, the universe talks to me. It has done amazing things for me. And lo and behold, here we are. And so the women like Andrea Dworkin, bell hooks, my hope is eventually that I can believe enough in myself to start writing and publishing my writings about women's liberation. I haven't gotten the courage yet. This is my first step in actually becoming a voice publicly. Privately, of course, I'm, a zealot. But it's been a long journey for me, and it's still ongoing for me to believe and trust that my voice is worthy and that I have things that ought to be said.
I, for one, think that Rose is a super eloquent and inspiring speaker, and I would love to hear more of what you have to say.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And it ties in nicely as well with our plans for the blog, because one thing that we really miss, I say the royal we, but me and Ro, and some extent like Lilith as well, when we've last spoken, was that we miss, the strategy side of FDS, the theory side of FDS. Writing the strategy post is something that we really, really miss doing. So I'm sure you will definitely find a home in the FDS blog for sure to share your writings with the world if you wanted to.
Thank you. Actually, just before we got on, I was reading Feminist Realism, an introduction with Lilith, because that's one of the things that really drew me to FDS was not just the back and forth, the actual conversation among women, but the writing was so good. I wish I could remember some of the names of those who are like the most prolific writers on FDS, but I'll have to go back because honestly, the women who were writing and publishing were a huge inspiration for me when I started that journey.
Definitely. Okay, last but not least, we have Diana. I will say Diana's episode was not published, unfortunately, because we had a technical issue whilst recording. But Diana was another one who brought such a unique perspective and energy to the podcast as well. And I was really, really excited to onboard. And just to give you an idea of the amount of competition when we were doing this round, we were originally only going to have 2 additional hosts, but we were just so impressed with the 3 of them that we just added an extra one as well, because we felt that all of them had something unique to offer as well.
Yay! Yay us! Whee!
Yes. So Diana, the floor is yours. Introduce yourself.
It's obviously very flattering to know that I made the cut because I know that it was an extremely long process and there were probably so many applicants. So, to be able to now finally be part of the podcast with everyone else is just, it's incredible. Because I think, I started listening to the podcast probably when it first came out, like years ago. I don't know who else had the story of like riding their bike and listening to a podcast. That was me too. Was that Rose?
Sweet. No, that was me, Patricia.
That was you? Yeah, it was the same. Like, I think I found FDS through Reddit. And then when they said they had a podcast, I just added it. And it just felt like I was listening to very sensible friends. People who would have called me out on my shit and told me, hey, you're self-sabotaging. And like, this isn't actually helpful to what you want from life. And I think that when you're surrounded by people who just enable you, and I mean, sometimes it's not even really their fault because so much of the advice we get as women is to enable men's bullshit. And so then when you have friends who aren't in that same FDS space as you are, or they're not there yet, the advice you get is very stupid. And so I felt like I was just in this path where I took a break from dating, which came around the same time COVID did. So it actually worked out because I was like, yeah, there's no way that I can break my will, because it was always like, I would fall off the wagon and then I would like download Hinge again. And then I'd be like, no, you have to try, you have to make an effort. And the options were so bad. And I think that it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, it's like Hinge is like prison food. You know what I mean? Like the more you eat that garbage, the more you start thinking it's like fine dining after a point, because that's all you have. So like you go back on these apps and you're like, ordinarily, if I met this guy on the street, I'd probably reject him. But because I'm being offered like a whole bunch of people, I'm like, okay, he's not the worst of all of the other terrible ones I've seen. So you just convince yourself to settle. It's just a game of settling. And I just knew somewhere that like, it just wasn't making me happy, and so I had to stop and I took the time off. And that was when I was starting to listen to the podcast. And it was just great advice, And also I always enjoyed the guest episodes as well, because I just feel like there was always a variety of people to listen to. And I just felt really validated by the fact that so many of these people had, different backgrounds in education, different backgrounds in lifestyle, just came from different parts of the world, different ages. And they all were echoing really similar thoughts to what I was feeling at that time. And so for me, when they announced last year that they were looking for a host, I was always telling my friend, I was like, oh my God, like if there was any podcast I'd want to be on, it would be this one. And so when it came out, I was like, oh my God, yes, I am going to throw my hat in the ring. Like, I'm a person who like talks myself out of things and then actually like ends up going for it because I'm like, oh, what do I have to lose? So I kind of did it with like, what do I have to lose? Like, if I get it, it's just going to be a really great thing. It's just going to be an experience I'm going to really enjoy. So there's nothing I have to lose from doing this. And I'm glad that I actually applied.
And we're really glad you applied as well. And, like you said, there's nothing to lose from doing it, but there is a whole lot to be gained as well. And that is one thing that we'd like to bring back. We would like to bring back more guest hosts as well, because especially the first year to 18 months of the podcast, we have some really, really awesome guests. So if you have any suggestions for who you would like on the pod, please let us know in the Discord or email or whatever, and we will try to make it happen, because I just feel like they just bring such an interesting dynamic to the podcast. And I always found it was really quite humbling when they would agree to come on to our little podcast, to give up some of their time.
Remember Gail Dines?
Gail Dines, we had Judge Lynn Tola. I don't get starstruck by people. I'm not really into celebrity culture, but I was starstruck by Gail Dines, by Lynn Tola, by Lindy Bancroft, because these were people that I'd grown up, reading or hearing, and then just being able to have a conversation with them was just awesome.
The Lundy Bancroft episode is probably one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, that one was a that was a whopper. I was so surprised we could get him, to be honest. And it was also worth temporarily suspending the no males rule, I think.
But also it goes to show how important the work is that you're doing, because it's resonating with people who have been in this space a really long time, offering sound advice to women,
And agreeing as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if anything, maybe we need to have like an ongoing Lundy Bancroft appearance invite, right? Like a standing invite, because I think, unfortunately, we have been brought up to be male-centered. It is what we have been, it is how we have been trained to think, which is very difficult to change. So there is nothing that reassures women more than hearing a man in a position of authority repeat and agree with what you are thinking and saying. It carries a weight that nothing else will.
I agree. And also, I really resonate with the appreciation that we have for the guests that were on FDS. And like you mentioned, Judge Lynn, am I pronouncing right? Toller? I still quote to myself and to my friends something that she left as this resonating last message. Don't invest in one area of your life to the detriment of others. And I think that is so beautiful to see us as multidisciplinary, multifaceted beings. I really like that.
Yeah. And I think it's also great because at the end of the day, I don't want a dysfunctional, angry, unhealthy person agreeing with me. You know what I mean? Because because that's telling me that I have reached an angry, unhealthy space. But when you have functional people who are experts in their field telling you, hey, your thought process is actually quite sound and logical, and you're acting in your own best interest, that's really reaffirming, because I don't want to be self-sabotaging, especially in something as important as selecting a life partner or selecting someone to date. The thing is, we can't afford to make mistakes, in this process. And we can't be as whimsical as men. And that's the thing, men are approaching dating entirely differently from us because they only stand to gain, whereas we really stand to lose. And so I think FDS has come up with a system where we, what was it? Maximizing
female benefit.
Female benefit.
Female benefit. Exactly. The crazy thing is maximizing female benefit is actually what ends up evening out the scales. That's actually the most equitable approach,
That's the new feminism.
That's the new feminism.
And it is the future we have to carve out as a global people, because we are looking at incoming water wars. We're looking at extreme climate refugees becoming more and more of an issue. We're going to be losing coastline, which is the most densely populated area in the entire planet. This is going to be huge. This is really a tipping point. I do believe this in my heart. So we're at a tipping point between white gold, which is water, and black gold, which is oil, climate change, and gender. This is the crux of our times.
And why do you think these issues are more important for women or more detrimental for women?
Basically, the canary in the coal mine. We are always going to be the ones who are disadvantaged and more vulnerable in these situations of famine, of war, because not only do we require, particular kinds of medical care, but we can always get pregnant. We can die in labor. We can have issues postpartum. The list goes on and on and on. And so I feel like if we start to look at it, like you say, if we start to have maximized female benefits, and in fact, it benefits the entire globe.
Yep. The thing is, if we live in an unstable society, then women are the ones who stand to lose, because even in war and famine, it's men who end up taking advantage of the vulnerable. So we stand to risk a lot by letting men do whatever the fuck they want.
So true. It's so true.
And that extends to our dating life, really.
Yes, absolutely. I think everything grows from that seed, right? It's either a seed that can sprout a healthy ecosystem or a rotten one. And that's why, as Diana is saying, it is the most important decision we can make. Now, listen, I could keep talking with you all day long, but I know we do have some time constraints. And Savannah, I also heard you say in the beginning of the podcast that you had some updates for us concerning what you and Ro were pivoting towards. Could you give us a bit of a preview of that?
Yes. So we have now got the host in place, which is really exciting. So the plan is that Diana and Rose will be doing the main episodes moving forwards, and myself and Patricia will be doing the bonus content because, again, we've been really slacking on the bonus content. So we will be bringing that back for you all, which will be exciting.
Yay!
Like, Ro will dip in from time to time, but the plan is for Ro and I to take a more backstage approach and do things in the background to hopefully grow the brand even more this year as well. So we're going to hopefully relaunch a blog on the website. So we'll actually have like strategy posts again and theory posts, which are really popular. Yeah, I think my favorite one, actually, go slight pivot, was the dick size does matter post because the queen who wrote that, just her way of words and her imagery. I'll try and find the bonus or the episode where we read it on the podcast, but I couldn't even finish it without laughing. But that was...
But it's true. We're allowed to have preferences.
Yeah.
Jokes aside, I was just talking to my partner about that yesterday, that some women actually prefer smaller, average, but that's their preference.
I mean, but again, though, like women have been gaslit into believing that, you know, size doesn't matter or it's about the person, yada, yada, yada. When it's like, well, actually, to some degree, I'm not saying it's everything, but it does, you know, matter. Just like anything else to do with, you know, like just like the male look, for example. Like looks do matter to a certain extent. I'm not saying it has to be everything, but it does matter.
Yeah, and we're allowed to do, it's not body shaming, it's preferences.
Yeah, it depends on a woman's physiology as well, the way her cervix is tilted. I mean, this is all biological, right?
Of course.
Exactly. And there is a lid for every pot as well. So I don't know why the men were getting mad. The reaction to that was pretty wild.
Yeah. You know, men will go on and on about like biological destiny, but honestly, the only biological destiny women need to follow is that you can be as demanding and set the bar as high as you want. You have the right to do that, and that's your biological destiny. They have to just put up with it. They don't get a say. They don't.
It's not only that you get to do that, you have to do that. You have to be picky.
Yep.
Okay, so that is our new hosts. I am really excited to have them on board and for them to share their knowledge and expertise and to bring just a different flavor to the podcast. And I sincerely hope that you will support the three of them just as much as you supported Ro, Lilith, and I when we first started out as well. As I said before, Ro and I will still be around. I'll be on the bonus content, which will be released every Friday. And Ro will dip in and out as and when her schedule allows for it, because she's just insanely busy at the moment. So this isn't the last of Ro and I and hopefully Lilith, but at the same time, it will give the podcast the consistency that it deserves, because we really, really miss recording and producing content for you all. So we are really excited to have a bigger host team. And yeah, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions for the new hosts as well, please let us know in the comments or the show notes or on Discord or via email. So check us out on Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Female Dating Strategy. I am also around on X still for some reason. You can find me at Savannah_FDS. You can also find the Female Dating Strategy as well on X too. We will revive that account. There's a lot happening on X actually, and I thought it has gone down the shitter since Muskrat has been in power, but there's just something that is weirdly addicting about it. So I'm still unfortunately around, just less of it. I limit my time on there. And yeah, we will see you next week. And for all you scrotes out there.
Yeah, to all those scrotes, die mad. And to all of our sisters, be reborn.
See you next week.